If we want to survive, we have to make it until dawn.
What is that?
Hey everyone, Justin Crumley here with the Cujo Productions channel. Welcome to another edition of The Film Cave. Today we're going to be talking about the film Until Dawn. This was directed by David F. Sandberg, and it stars Ella Rubin, Maya Mitchell, and Peter Stormare. Clover, a young adult whose sister goes missing after leaving home, travels to the location she was last seen, along with her friends. They eventually stumble upon the location and quickly discover that things don't make any sense. They are repeatedly being killed off in many random, gruesome, and sometimes violent ways, only to be revived and have to figure out how to survive all over again. So this is of course based on the Until Dawn video game of the same name. However, you probably wouldn't be able to have guessed that if you looked at the trailers. The story is very different than what is in the game. So, let's talk about it. Alright, before I give any of my thoughts on the film, I will just simply say, I went into this film open-minded. I thought, okay, it's different from the game. Clearly it has a different story. There's different characters. Here's the thing. If you've ever played the game, you know that it's one of those games where your choices determine what happens in the story. Who lives, who dies, that kind of stuff. So if the movie could somehow capture something similar to that, like maybe there's a scene where the characters figure out, like, hey guys, it's our choices. It's our what we're doing is what's leading to the outcomes here. I would have been okay with that. I would have been fine with that. It's like, all right, it's not 100% like the game, but I don't need the story from the game to be 100% in the film. That said, talking about the film itself, this film is not very good. There really is little to no connection to the game at all. As I said, none of the characters are the same, sort of. None of the plot elements from the game make their way into the movie at all. And really, the movie overall felt like something they wrote. There was a script for some original movie, and then they thought, oh, well, what if we make this an Until Dawn movie? We'll make more money on that. Haha. And I think that's the biggest issue I have with the film. It's not so much that it isn't connected to the game. I think the problem mainly comes in when it tries to be like the game, when it actually does connect to the game. Because on its own, if it were like a completely original movie, it was called something different, something that isn't Until Dawn or anything, I think it would have been a decent movie. It wouldn't have been great. It wouldn't have been like a memorable or a scary horror film, but I think it actually would have been more to the film's benefit if it wasn't called Until Dawn. And I normally hate using that criticism because I do find it very lazy, but in this case, I think the shoe fits. To get more in specific, I'm going to have to kind of give a spoiler warning for both the game and maybe a little bit for the movie too. So, in the game, there are all these cutscenes where there's like an eccentric psychologist that's speaking to the TV. Now, we get the impression that he's speaking to one of the characters, and, we see these scenes play out at random parts in the game. There's one scene in the movie where this all kind of happens. There's one scene in the movie where we get to see the eccentric psychologist, and little fun fact, Peter Stormare, the actor that played the eccentric psychologist, actually reprises his role in this movie. That's one of the connections, and to be quite honest, he's probably one of the positives of this movie. He is a lot of fun to watch on screen. Unfortunately, the scene doesn't make a lot of sense, and it is the scene that I'm talking about. One of the characters ends up meeting him, and he gives her this long spiel about, trauma, and I don't even remember what else he says, but he talks about how, like, oh, there has to be someone that has to die, or something like that, and yeah, it's really random, and it just kind of felt a little tacked on. It really felt like they filmed that scene because, again, maybe they wrote the script and they were like, oh shit, we have like absolutely no connection to the game. Oh, we gotta film this. We gotta make the scene. That may or may not be the case. I didn't look up anything about it, but that's just kind of what it felt like to me. The scene felt very tacked on. There are also a few moments in the story where you can kind of see where they were trying to pay homage to the game. Like, for example, there's a few moments in the game where you have to keep the controller still. A little prompt on the screen will pop up like, don't move. And you have to keep the controller absolutely still. If you move it at all, the character will like make a noise or move, and then they die or something bad happens. And there's definitely a couple of scenes where you can kind of like mentally put the image in yourself of like, don't move, So those were actually some of the cooler scenes, I think. And maybe in that regard, probably what they should have done with this movie if they were going to tie it to Until Dawn. The scene with the eccentric psychologist really did not need to happen. It felt very random, very tacked on, just absolutely unnecessary, and kind of a Deus Ex Machina in some ways, and it's for the very reason I pointed out when he says like, well, someone has to die. So okay, I really do think the biggest issue with this film was when it tried way too hard to connect to the video game. Because again, on its own, it could have just been like a disposable horror film that could have been made on like a shoestring budget with some decent actors that probably would make its money back in a couple of weeks after a few weeks in the box office, but they figured, oh, we got to make some money on this, so let's slap the Until Dawn IP on it. And yeah, basically the few connections that it has to the game don't really make a lot of sense, and it kind of takes away from the story. None of the actors really do a bad job here. There really isn't any of the performances that necessarily stand out, but none of them are really bad either. I think this one mostly just fails on its writing and the fact that they tried way too hard to tie it to Until Dawn. I think it goes without saying, I don't recommend you guys see this one in theaters. If you're curious at all, I would just wait for it to hit streaming. If you have that streaming service that it just so happens to fall on, maybe check it out there. But other than that, I would definitely just skip this one. Maybe go see something else. Go see Sinners. That's a better movie. Alright guys, that's all I got for you today. If you guys did see Until Dawn, the movie, be sure to let me know what you thought of it in the comment section. And actually, if you've played the game, which I think is a million times better, and you should if you haven't. But if you have played the game, let me know what you think of that in the comment section below. I definitely would love to talk to you guys about that one too. I know I said that my Last of Us reviews would be up. I started taking notes on the first two episodes. I'm gonna watch the third one, and I'll do all three of them. I promise those are coming. I just be a little patient with me, guys. Until then, I'm Justin Crumley, and this is Cujo Productions saying, stay awesome.